Hey y'all, Pastor Adam Carnell here with another episode of Emmanuel Engage. If you're like me and you're on a decent amount of social media apps or use an iPhone, a lot of them have an ability to show you memories from the past, whether that's like the past year or the past few years. And typically it just shows you some of those things that you've done in the past on that date. For example, the last couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of memories about different Easters. And so I often hear the question, why does the date of Easter change so much? Well, that's actually a really good question that kind of gets at the intersection of faith and politics and astrology. So it's a lot of things that are mixed together. So we're going to take you back in time to about the year 325 AD at the First Council of Nicaea. Today we know the Nicene Creed, and that comes from that council. There's a lot of other things that are supposedly attributed to the Council of Nicaea, some of which are probably true, others of which are vastly exaggerated. But one of the things that they did do is they did try to set the date in which we celebrate Easter. So why does it change? I mean, Christmas is on December 25th every single year. Thanksgiving is always the fourth Thursday in November, but Easter, sometimes it's in March and sometimes it's in April. So let's break it down just a bit. So as I said, then the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, there was a gathering of Christian bishops, and one of the things that they set was to find the date for Easter. So the first thing that they looked at is the spring equinox. When does spring begin? And that's sometime around March 20th. And then they decided to wait for the next full moon, and then the next Sunday after that, boom, there you go, that's Easter. Makes total sense, right? Well, not exactly. If you're following me, it seems to be a bit arbitrary. After all, Easter can fall anytime between March 22nd and April 25th. And so what exactly makes that date? Yes, I did double check those dates too. Don't worry, I don't just have them in my head. Well, that's because Easter is traditionally tied to the Jewish holiday of Passover. In some of our gospel traditions, it shows that the meal that Jesus was eating with his disciples was a Passover meal. No, not a perfectly Jewish Seder that we have today. It was a little bit of a precursor to that. That came a little bit later, that some of your Jewish siblings may celebrate as a Seder today. But that does come from that Jewish Passover date. And so that, of course, follows the Jewish lunar calendar. So the Jewish people use a calendar that is influenced by the phases of the moon, the cosmos. So as what God has set in place helps people form their time and therefore the identity. And so they use that to go off of the Jewish lunar calendar to set the date for our Easter. And so no matter when it falls, Easter still recognizes the good news that Christ is risen. In the past few years, we've celebrated Easter a little bit earlier. This year, we're celebrating Easter on April 20th. We begin our 3-day celebration, the 3-day feast on Maundy Thursday, that is Thursday, and then going into Good Friday, and traditionally the Easter Vigil on Saturday night, in which we celebrate the risen Christ. And so we kind of go through that story and recognize how God is still at work in that story even today. But the date of Easter is going off of the Jewish date of Passover, and so it is the first Sunday after the Passover, which happens to be the first Sunday after the full moon following the spring equinox. There have been some pushes in the last few years among some of our Orthodox and our Roman Catholic siblings, of which I think if they would agree, perhaps some of our Protestant brethren may come along with them to set a firm date for Easter, but they also recognize that would take it out of its Jewish context. And so we are very mindful of that as we celebrate this, that Jesus Christ was born of the Jews and lived a Jew and died a Jew, and that we still recognize the Jewish people as God's chosen people, and that the people of Christian faith are grafted onto that tree and are therefore invited to spread that love of God with all people, that you are a part of God's family. And so we recognize that it's the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ that helps us remember that we are a part of God's family, and that is nothing that you can earn on your own. It is always a pure gift of God's grace. And so we'd love to have you join us for our Easter services. We have Maundy Thursday at 7 p.m. here at church, Good Friday at 7 p.m. here at church. At 7 a.m. on Easter Sunday, we will gather next to our cemetery among the saints that are buried there to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And then 10:30 a.m. on Sunday for our festival worship service in the sanctuary.